Hi, Izzy.
Hello,
How are you, my cutie patootie?
I'm good. The sunshine has helped.
Yeah.
Um, it was a very easy morning going to nursery, so that's always a good way to start the day.
How old are the
Uh,
boys for our sweet listeners?
so Juno will be 4 on the 4th of June, so it's his crown birthday.
Oh,
I know. And then Judah will be 2.5 at that time as well.
and where in the world
Uh,
are you, dearest? Why are we
I am,
speaking in this strange way as opposed to in the flesh?
I know, I am in Brighton in the UK, and on the 1st of July, it will be 6 years since I've been in the UK.
How is that possible? My God.
Yeah, 2 kids, pandemic, and I know. I was thinking of like throwing a party, like,
Oh, you definitely must. But
like,
I mean, in
yeah,
preparing for this, because the way we know each other is I met you when you were 15, I think, grade 10,
yeah,
teaching
yeah,
you.
yeah,
And it
yeah.
was love at first sight. You were reading something wonderful. And now, for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. Some classic,
Maybe Sylvia Plath, the bell jar. I've got that behind me somewhere.
possibly. But I
Yeah.
immediately I thought, this is not your average 10th grader. This is how I was at that age.
Oh,
And I felt a kinship instantly. And I think it was mutual. And then our
mm,
friendship has just grown from there. And I was looking through my treasure trove of Izzy wonders. You'll see them in the foreground, things you've made. Cosmic Caring,
oh,
which is a print you made me just before you left for England. How long
yeah,
ago? How is that
yeah.
possible?
Life.
And you'll see I've put Mother Mary here because you're in
Oh,
this in the trenches of motherhood right now. And I've also
I've got
put,
I've got an embroidery piece here that just says "as a mother," and it just stays there.
and is that a piece you've made recently?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. I haven't. I've got lots of bits. You know, as a creative, you're always picking up pieces, and I
Yeah.
don't know where that's the finished piece. I think that's the finished piece, just as a mother, and I see it every day as a reminder.
So
Um.
I've put these little cards that we made as well in one of our flow sessions. So I started a studio here at my home back in 2017. And you were a regular and a great inspiration to me in my
I mean, medicine for me. It was such medicine. You know, I
say.
think it was a Tuesday. Um. Especially with what had happened before and then what was coming after with the imminent of the move and everything. And I definitely think in the early times in the UK, that was just like holding back onto that because it was just so isolating and
Yeah.
trying to create the go flow and the flow sessions in my own way, which I suppose I still do now in little
Yeah, you
things. Like I've
do.
said, when I come to little moments, I'm like, what would Charisse do?
So what we used to do in those sessions is a combination of some kind of mindful movement like yoga or qigong or conscious dance, meditation of some sort, silent mantra, and then we'd make stuff. So the one session we made these incredible little cards that are just an constant source of joy and inspiration to me. And this one popped out when I was preparing to chat to you, and it's clearly your handwriting. And it says, learn how to become. So I thought maybe it was a little message from past Izzy to current Izzy.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I'd say
Yeah,
so.
I'm
And
always,
everything I was pulling out was fascinating. So this was a card you gave me, I think, as you were going, and it's beautiful. It's called Mother Moon. So again, a very strong mothering message coming through. And it ended like this: I hold you 90 degrees and 1/4 to my heart, enough distance to remember and hold, radical self love and all that jazz. Izzy. Oh my God. So this lives here on my standing desk. Like it's been here
like,
ever since you gave it to me. Because as always, it couldn't be more moving and poetic. Uh,
well, I organized the was it the Zabalaza Festival where it was Alex, Jess, and I don't know if I can say names, but
Yeah.
and you gave that space to let me recite that really angry, angsty poem.
I brought
Oh,
Izzy's first volume of poetry to the podcast. For those of you who are watching, it's an absolute delight, self-published, called Salted Cyber Poetry. And you'll see I've flagged a few things I want to pull out. But yeah, continue with the anecdote, please.
no, and I was just looking, I was thinking of that poem and I was just looking through some writing that I've done now, and just the growing up in the words, because now everything is centered around being a mum.
Yeah.
And I think it's also a lot more light-hearted, which I think maybe is coming to peace with it, because then I still have that angsty, frustrated, don't want to conform 15-year-old, but here it's just kind of like, and it's just I love reflecting.
Well,
And I
I
think
mean,
that's
the
what
things that I've pulled out of this first volume, and I mean, how old were you? 18, 17 when you wrote these?
I
You
think it
were
was 17.
you were a kid,
Yeah,
but you already
yeah,
had that wisdom of
yeah.
not taking yourself too seriously. So, I mean, this is the title of one of the poems. One time I just mixed words like a cake, and the result was arrogance. And it's brilliant.
I
And
don't know.
then actually mothering comes up a hang of a lot in this volume. So
I,
it was in the cards, I would
I need
say.
I need to try and find a copy because I haven't read it for years. I haven't. I
Well,
think so.
I have this very precious copy here, well read. Um, I'll save some of the others for later. Because tell
Mm.
me, do you want to share something that you've written recently as a counterpoint? Do you have anything
Oh,
there?
I wouldn't say necessarily recently, just because I think
You've been
as a
changing a lot of nappies.
yeah, and teeth brushing, teeth brushing, choosing my battles. But I did find a quite a funny one, and I wrote it down before we before I wrote. I'll can I read two? Because two of them are quite
Please,
light.
please.
So this one, so okay, I did my poems now. They don't have titles. They're just quickly written as quickly as possible on my notes app. Um, so this one is, I don't know. So it's watching the weather trying to rain brings reminder of hurrying my son to pee on the potty. Reluctant eye rolling and a small trickle. Either way, we have a long bus to take. And
Love it.
it's where I'm just having to make peace with the situations of just like, yep, here we are, and it's funny, which is motherhood. It's, exasperating
Yeah.
with motherhood. And I just like I'm enjoying I enjoy reflecting on my poems now as well a bit more, because I think they are a bit more lighthearted, because my main my muses are my children, and I mean
They're a joy. I had the pleasure of meeting them in the flesh over Christmas, and oh my word, the deliciousness of them cannot be overstated.
and I'm so they talk so much about South Africa, which is I'm so proud of, but I'm also it's quite heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But that brings to mind, then how can I bring the South Africa to here for them? How can we recreate what we have in South Africa here? And
Mm.
that's, I'm making like a family tree for Juno with lots of photos. For his birthday, I'm making a photo album with all the people from South Africa, because he is a sentimental little dude, and I think he'd really like that.
I mean, I sent you this picture this morning. I turned the page on the calendar you gave us as a gift, and I had a good feeling about May. And then I saw this photo for May, and is it Juno kissing Judah, or is it the other way around? Is it Juno
I
kissing
think
Judah?
it's a Juno Judah, yeah.
And they're so
And
close in age, it's hard to tell from this angle who's the older. So Juno is my godson, and then Judah came hot on his heels.
on the solstice, which I love. So I have a lovely little summer baby here in the UK.
Mm,
But then I like the idea of the roles reversing back
mm,
in South Africa,
mm,
having a little, because it's so hard to just always like, oh, I'm not going to get into it, but I've just been dreaming so much about South Africa recently.
mm. Yeah, we've got some
Um,
plans,
yes,
some study abroad plans, because you do have such a fine mind that I think would really benefit from further studies. And you have studied some interesting things. Do you want to talk about that? You studied
uh,
eurythmy.
I studied eurythmy. So upon moving to the UK,
Yeah.
I did it. So the move was very sudden, a 6 month move, um, of packing up a house. And that's when flow was fantastic, coming to a safe space where there weren't boxes and things being removed and people coming in to look at the dishwasher
Yeah.
and the pool. And then, so being at the Steiner School, we had an amazing eurythmy teacher. And
Micah. Oh, and
yeah,
you had
what was his
Sand
name?
Sandise?
Sun, yeah, Sandisa,
Yeah.
who he was fantastic. And I was like, oh my goodness, he really brought a beautiful modern,
African. Yeah.
you can do so much with this. So I applied to a place to bring some sort of stability to the UK. I applied and it was everything that I didn't want. No, the more I reflect on it, it was just not the right time. I think I was an extremely vulnerable person and I really was still quite angry and I wanted to channel that anger in pushing boundaries. But to push boundaries in a very rigid Steiner institution,
Mm.
it was, yeah. So
So
after about
explain
3,
maybe just briefly what eurythmy is, because some people will wonder, what is
I
that even?
don't think eurythmists know what eurythmy is. That is part of the charm.
So
But
we
the
were
way that I,
together at the Imhoff Waldorf School,
yeah,
and so part of your curriculum there is this movement music modality that was created by Rudolf Steiner, right?
yeah. And it is beautiful. And so I call it the science and philosophy behind movement and dance. And, I still carry some of the elements that I studied there because it is a beautiful study.
Mm.
And the students there, I had a 64-year-old Japanese lady in my class who had waited most of her life, and I had a girl from Ecuador. It was a beautiful cultural melting pot. It just wasn't the right time. And
Mm.
I left before I wanted to hate it because I do think it would be something that I would love to explore
Yeah.
again because it is beautiful.
I came
And
close to studying it too, but I mean, it's a full out, like 4 year degree.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was in a beautiful space. And again, like everything was beautiful, but it just wasn't the right time.
Yeah. Timing is
So
so
yeah,
much of everything. Timing,
yeah,
timing. So speaking of
I think
timing, you were a mother at the age of
so Juno came into the world in 2020. So I was 20, slap bang in the middle of
worldwide
lockdown.
pandemic. Yeah, nightmarish.
Uh,
I mean, how did
having
you give birth? You were entirely alone, weren't you? How did that whole situation pan out?
so at the time of the UK that your birthing partner could be in the room during the active part, the big show, but before and after you weren't allowed any visitors or anyone. So I was alone on a ward and I was playing Scrabble on my phone and the midwife turned the radio on to keep me company. So I had all these beautiful birthing songs and such, but it just didn't feel right. And so the radio was playing Elton John and Tom Waits, and I was just like, this is it. And what's quite funny now is that Juno likes Elton John, so I'm looking forward
It was
to
fate.
telling, hey, buddy. And
Amor fati, love your fate, like how things. You mentioned earlier about mothering and letting go, and I think that's what I've learned mostly in mothering. I was hiking with Jack, who's now 16, my boy, yesterday in the mountains, and he was listening. He's got a project for himself where he's rating every album released in 2024. So he was listening to that, and I was listening to podcasts on new materialisms and whatnot. I was actually listening to a very interesting one on Hegel as a speculative realist. But yeah, there we were side by side in the mist and the buchu and the ericas, and it was exquisitely beautiful, but kind of in parallel worlds, which is how it is with teenage children. You just kind of wait for them to grace you with a moment of their attention.
Yeah.
And Ali was having a rough time. She was like PMSing between you and I. And she came and like curled up on my lap a couple of nights ago, and I said to her, this is the highlight of my year. You know, when they, and you're in the opposites, I remember it very well, where you're like, could you please stop touching me for 5 seconds so that I can just come home to myself, breathe,
Yeah.
rest, recuperate.
Yeah.
Like, I know how
Yeah.
relieved you are right now that the boys are at nursery. I
Yeah.
recall. Yeah.
But like there's this sudden shift. I don't know if it's to do so in the UK, children start school at the age of 4.
Mm,
And so Juno will be starting in September.
wow.
And there's been
So
this
young.
sudden shift. I know. But there's been this sudden shift now where I'm just like, oh my goodness, no, like I need, and I've noticed it within myself, and I'm really grateful for it, where I'm not as like high strung. And I think it's also coming with his own development where we have really interesting chats
Mm,
and a lot more rewarding, but also just the constant mom,
yeah.
mom, mom,
Yeah.
mom, mom,
Yeah.
mom, mom,
Yeah.
mom, and
No, it's full out. Yeah.
you hear it when they're not here.
And I couldn't wait for mine to grow up, to be honest. I couldn't wait because I love teenagers. I mean, I've known you since you were a teenager, and I get on really well with teenagers. And I thought, oh, it'll be like that. But it turns out when they're your own teenagers, you just get that backhand compliment of the worst of them because they
Yeah.
feel secure enough to be that with you. And I've got good ones. I count my blessings. It's not like they're
Mm,
out of control or anything.
mm.
But I still really miss the mom, and just the
Oh,
physicality of holding and that touch aspect of relationship, which teenagers are very sensitive to that. They're like, they'll let you touch them, but on their terms, and it's kind of rare. Yeah.
I recently started, I've come to the realization that Juno, I've just kind of been saying to myself that Juno is my biggest teacher,
Mm.
but he's also my biggest trigger in the sense that we are very, very strong-willed. And sometimes we just, but I kind of think of like a cowboy scene, guns drawn. And then sometimes I think I was like, oh my gosh, is this what it's going to be like in 10 years' time?
You don't know.
Are we going to revisit the toddler?
There's a lot of theories about that, like the
Yeah,
three-nager is kind of a taste for that, but just let that all go. It's not
yeah,
worth wasting your energy on that because I know that I tried my very, very best. I really did. I didn't take anything more seriously than my mothering. And I was very mindful about it. And yet there will be things that they will hold against you that you cannot even dream up. And we're pretty creative people. We can dream up anything. So I
yeah,
realized like all the stuff I was stressing about unnecessary, just let that go and just try and enjoy the phase you find yourself in. And I'm speaking to you and me because I realize that as kind of cold as the teenage years can be, they can be tricky. We're still under one roof, and there's gifts
yeah,
in that, you know?
yeah,
Like more and more, I'm
yeah,
realizing that that's the gift of family, is you're just kind of
yeah,
there.
yeah.
And that's not nothing. That's kind of everything.
Yeah, I feel that living, I think, particularly alone
Mm.
and quite about an hour away from my family, whenever I go home, because I live in London, it is just like to be under one roof and
Mm.
it's just like I'm so grateful for it. But also the dynamics are so different now because I bring the boy, so I'm a mother, but then my mum's there. But it is just again, and I sometimes imagine like, and I think that's also going back to South Africa of just like the family, which
Mm.
is something I crave and miss so much, and
Mm.
which is so important, I believe, for the book because they talk about their family and you and my friends and such
Yeah.
so much. Just
Yeah.
I don't know.
Community.
Oh
It's what we're all yearning for, is because
yeah,
it's our true nature is to belong to each other. And then
yeah,
unfortunately, the structures of nuclear families are just generally pretty toxic. So that's not very helpful, as you've discovered already.
Well, I feel so I co-parent with the boy's dad, and so we've had real ups and downs with it.
Mm.
But right now we're in quite an up, and I really sometimes I get quite sad because I think, it didn't work out the way that most families do. But instead of ruminating on that, I try and think, how can we shift the narrative that we're doing something different? Despite us living separately, we are still a family unit.
Mm.
And the boys know that, and they see us. We try and do family things together because I want them, because they're not, unfortunately, they're not going to remember us living with each other, but they will remember, hopefully, the times that we put in as a family.
Yeah.
And that could be walking to one another's houses. And I try and, it is quite an exciting thing when you're doing something different, but it is also quite terrifying. I don't know. Everything that I've done so far has been quite different to the norm. Very much that like my 15-year-old poet wanted, but now living that reality, I'm just like, whew.
Total trailblazer all along the line. I feel like another poem is in order. Don't know if you want to read one of your recent ones or if I should dig in here. I mean, oh, interesting one, this one. The fear of committing oneself to an art is the name of the poem. Hey, the more things change, the more they stay the same, I would say. Um, and I just found the last little stanza interesting. Um, Yellow becomes the color of melancholy, which is your favorite color, and you're wearing yellow. Love that. Whilst blue describes my lust for human touch, I am a negligent mother, is how the poem ends. And it's really about the grappling with the creative process and how we tend to not prioritize that
No.
when that's really where our joy, our meaning resides, is in doing our creative work, isn't it?
Yeah, creative practice. I mean, going to the piece of the constantly creating, I am, but it's so hard to have to, I think, especially sharing the space with the children, of having to put it away again. And you're putting, so I do embroidery. I've got an embroidery piece
Oh,
here
sure.
that I'm working on. It is part of it's a bit, yeah, I love, it's getting there. I'm going to do some more today, but it's part of a 4-piece panel.
Lovely.
So I'm going to do another. I'm not going to really it's a bit cringe. I was trying to find a job earlier this year before I realized I wanted to go back to studying. And it's a bit of a manifesto of just basically begging to be employed. and and then on the other piece, I really want to do what I've been questioning is who am I and how do I look in the eyes of my children? Because I don't know, that those are some words that I quite like. I think often when I'm making a piece, they're titles, and that I've been playing with quite a bit because I look at the boys as, dependents, but also teachers and, extensions of myself, but also themselves as well. And as they get older, they grow more and more into that, which is really beautiful, but also
Challenging.
quite.
Shall we say challenging?
But yeah, who am I in the eyes of my children is something that's going to be kind of like the title of the full piece. So it's getting there slowly, but it could take 6 years. It could take in the next couple of months. But I think, especially as creatives, we always try and see. And I also think in this day and age where you're on Instagram and everyone's making beautiful art and posting the finished
No
piece.
pressure at all.
Yeah. And I call myself a process artist because I'm just like, I'm all there for the process rather than the end result.
Absolutely.
So
it's not
yeah,
about that destination at all. There's not that much reward there. The reward is in the step by step, as you know.
yeah.
Something to look forward to. So I'm also always concerned about how my children feel about me, maybe more than perceive me. And So I was in a writing workshop and I just quickly wrote this little piece of flash fiction to kind of impress them or to try and engage with them. So I immediately shared it with them. And of course they were like, oh, mom, it's so cringe. Because my slang isn't Gen Z, I'm a Gen Xer. So it was super out of date. So then I collaborated with them and
Oh wow.
updated the dialogue because it's very dialogue rich. And then I just submitted it because I submit a lot all the time and just endlessly rejected. I'm so relaxed about it now. And so I never actually expect anything to be accepted. And it got accepted for publication. So it's going to be published in an anthology. I think it's called Panties and Other Stories or something cute in August. And then I just kind of, because I'd got a few edits from the editor and then I was passing them by Jack. He was actually homesick from school. And the next thing, he sent me the next scene based on that scene that I'd written. And now we're co-writing this cool kind of YA Afrofuturist novel
Wow.
together. So isn't that a dream come true for someone like us to like do a
True.
creative project with your spawn?
Oh, oh, snakes
Yeah.
are like, oh, I love that. That is
Yeah.
something. I've already got books put away that I want to read with the boys when they're older, but the thought of collaborating next to them. I mean, we do painting with next to each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
The thought that, oh, that is so
Isn't
exciting.
it lovely? And then Ollie, my daughter, made some original artwork for it already. Because you know she's just such an artist. I was so lit up yesterday because she was using actually the easel that Indy made with
Mhm.
Ulrich at our lovely school, where
Oh,
everything was done by everyone. So in our Waldorf school, everybody did philosophy, art, woodwork, astronomy, you name it. I mean, that to me is just such a rich curriculum.
uh,
And I had the honor of like kind of pioneering all of these main lessons and threshold experiences, and you were part of that. Your class, I had all the way from grade 8 through grade 12, although you only joined us in grade 10. So that was really powerful. And you're all still like my favorite people, I think, because of that, because we grew up together and went through all
yeah.
of that together. Yeah.
I mean, I was with one of the classmates and we were just like talking, and then with my brother who had also was at the school for a bit, and just talking about just the people working there, you know, also like Lulu Mila, and just the space and how beautiful. And even so, the friend was just like, you could feel the effort that the teachers put into, because you guys really just threw yourself, you know, you were the school.
No, it was heart and soul. And it was 24/7. So it felt a bit insane at the time because my children were
Yeah.
still quite young. So I
Yeah.
felt like, am I mad to be doing? But now the riches are just endless. I mean, you're one of them, absolutely. I just see Zoom telling me we're running out of time because I don't have the paid version. So I want to really read this poem of yours. It's called Understanding. As a poet, I have learned how to rust through words and mourn through apostrophes. And it's set up so beautifully on the page. This one
I was
here.
on my time. Right. Oh my
Oh,
goodness. I haven't read. Oh,
and it's good, you got to admit. It's pretty good stuff.
that's
Yeah.
the BC before children. Wow. It makes me write more, I think, but that is just like
What do
thank
I
you for bringing
endlessly
it up.
say to you? Are you writing? How about submitting to this? I constantly send you links to submit to
No,
things because the UK has a lot of
I
encouragement for writers, you know.
I submitted a poem if I have time to read it quick.
Yeah, please.
It was all about it wasn't accepted, but that's fine.
Hmm.
It was nice to kind of have that pressure and the prompt. So it was I think it was growing or a garden. So this was it. I didn't get to title. The closest thing I've grown to compare to a garden is a placenta. Like memory pressed flowers, I pressed this organ of life to paper, haphazardly packed in my birthing bag. Some bury their placentas in the soil to grow or in their bellies to digest. But I have mine as a print on my wall. William Morris wallpaper would fail to compare, as included the Garden of Eden, to the placenta. Grown, nurtured, nurturing, harvested, birthed on my wall.
Yeah.
Again, just always retracing to motherhood. I mean, it's the biggest muse, it's the biggest inspiration, but also the biggest frustration, because why can't I write about anything else but motherhood? But then it's also just
No, because
really
you're doing it so right. I've seen you in action and you're wholeheartedly engaged in the thing that's probably the most important thing anyone ever does, which is raise up new humans, hopefully better humans.
Yeah, competent young men. That's what I say, you know.
Yeah.
But it is, and it's such a joy to be able to share them with you as well through this. I mean, God bless the internet and this time that we're living in, just to be able to have that connection.
Yeah.
And it's so, just going to us, what I love is that whenever I try and describe you, it's so hard, because I'm like, she was my teacher, but then we did this thing, like beautiful, like art therapy kind of thing, and then she's now like the guardian of my eldest, and like we talk almost every day, and I kind of want to be her when I grow up, and and you know,
I want to be you when I grow up.
But yeah, just reflecting on that, that's one of my favorite things. It's just, you just can't, yeah, just can't quite box it, which I do enjoy not being able to do.
I mean, while I was walking with my son yesterday, it did cross my mind that, God, this is a thankless thing, this mothering, because he can be quite gruff, let's put it that
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
And he can eviscerate me like nobody ever has in my life. And it's truly been some of the most painful realizations that I've had. Because he was my little buddy, man. From the minute he was conceived, I knew it. And we were tight all along the line until 13. Then things changed, as they must. And then I checked myself and I thought, don't you mean the most powerfully deep learning? And if there's something I love, it's learning. And so I'm just grateful for the opportunity. And I use that ho'oponopono all the time. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And that's all we can really do in relationship with anyone, but especially our children and our parents, this lineage that we find ourselves in. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That is a really beautiful phrase. I definitely will incorporate that more.
Yeah.
But no, you're so right. It's, you know, I've got a book somewhere there called The Best, Most Awful Job.
Nails
Of just being a mother, and I love it. It's just kind of like, you know, I say it's like herding cats sometimes.
Yeah.
But it is just like, I wouldn't have it any other way. And the deeper I go into, the more grateful that just quick thing, because moving to the UK after leaving the eurythmy school, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And because I couldn't study here, because I hadn't lived here for long enough. So I wrote a mind map, you know, go back to South Africa, get a job somewhere, go traveling, move out. And then at the corner, as a little joke, I wrote, make a baby. And then within 3 months.
That's how I ended up with my two. I watched that movie, The Secret, which was all the rage at the time. And I was trying to make a vision board, and I'm paging through all these magazines, and I feel like I don't really want anything. I feel like my life is whole and full. And I see this picture of a little white baby and a little black baby sitting together. And I cut it out because I think it's adorable. And within a year, I had two little babies. And I was like, God damn, I didn't mean both at the same time. It was radically hard. And it was,
very careful with my mind map stuff, but it is just of all just falling into place and just accepting what it is. And I don't know, I feel like I'm coming into a period where I'm just more grateful. I feel like my feet are landing more and more back onto the ground.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah. Feels, coming back into orbit, as I say. And it is,
it is.
Yeah, it is. No, just it is getting more rewarding. Sharing a love of books and then just teaching them little things like bird songs and which bird it is. So, um you're kind of like taken back into being a child yourself, getting excited that the same snail is there and such.
Mm.
Sorry, my doorbell's going.
It's a sign. I love you
Yeah, it's just
guys. Go
love
see
you.
who's at
Thank
the door. Opportunity knocks.
you
Thanks, my Izzy. Bye, my
so much.
darling. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.